Welcome to the Become Who You Are podcast. I'm Jack Riggert, your host. I'm here with Tom Hampson, who's a regular guest on our show, of course. Tom, you just wrote an article, The Troubling Case of Jeffrey Epstein. You and I were going to talk about parental rights, which is so important to this case that just came down to the Supreme Court. But there's just a lot to talk about. This is on everybody's mind. I hope you don't mind if I
No,
start
that's
out
fine.
with the troubling case of Jeffrey Epstein. Give our audience a little background on this, will you? Where you're seeing it. Look, at everybody's reading all the headlines, et
Yeah.
cetera, et cetera. You have an interesting way you're looking at this case, and you're looking at it the way I do too. I think we look at this from a moral standpoint, you and I,
Right.
and remind our audience that you and I do a presentation called Stolen Innocence, which is really the moral aspect of what we're doing to children. It's blatant, it's upfront and personal, and I think along with parental rights that we wanted to talk about today, this Jeffrey Epstein case falls right into that moral background, doesn't it?
It does. And I've been interested in the case since 2008 when he was first convicted of child sex. Well, he was convicted of soliciting prostitution and soliciting for prostitution of a minor down in Florida. The way the case was handled was so unusual, and he was such a major figure in trafficking kids at that time that it was shocking to me that the government approached the case the way they did. So I've been looking at him for years, and he's really an example that I see of one of the problems with the way we deal with child sexual abuse in this country and perhaps around the world. Something that started me, one of the things that started me being involved in as a nonprofit to try to deal with this child protection issue is that I saw the government wasn't doing what it should be doing. They always say that that they're increasing taxes or they're doing this thing or that thing for the children, for the children. The politicians are out there every time they want to get money or they
We
want to get
hear
a vote.
Nancy Pelosi,
Yeah, that's for
over
the
and over again,
children.
in between aborting kids and transing
Right.
kids, she's there for the children, right?
Right. Well, see, to me, I've known this for years that this is just total BS, that they don't really care about the kids. And the Epstein case, to me, is an example that proves the fact that they don't care about these kids. Because here he was known, it was just well known that he had, even in 2008, that he had dozens, if not hundreds, of victims. And yet they basically gave him a slap on the wrist. They essentially immunized everybody but him who was involved in it in that case, which is unheard of. I've never heard of anything like that before. So they didn't go after anybody other than Epstein.
He served a little bit of time,
Well, he
not
did.
much.
He got a year and a half. What was it? A year and a half. But he got out every day. He was like he was on work release. So
He was on work release.
he spent 14 hours a day out of the jail, and he basically had a jail cell that wasn't even locked. It was a minimum security jail. He was treated like a king. It was just unheard of. It's like something out of a movie where you see these movies where the mobster's in prison and he's got a big luxurious
It's just a
apartment.
facade to make it look like they did something. When
Right.
when you wrote this article, it's the big thing: is it suicide? Is it not suicide? The real issue is trafficking. You wrote, and the sexual exploitation of children, and that's really what it comes down to. I think in the middle of all of this, and this is your point, was that we don't see these victims, these
Right.
thousands of children that were involved in child porn, child sex trafficking. They're on his computer, in things that he produced, as well as other child porn. I mean, this guy had a real issue and
Well,
a real problem. I think at the end of the day, it's what we're concerned about as people that are that care about kids is these high profile people and the deep state that you're alluding to now that lets these guys off or doesn't even investigate them. They don't care. And if we don't
those
stand up and talk about it, nothing's going to happen.
One of the things that I mentioned in the article is that J.P. Morgan Chase was sued. There was a lawsuit against them, and they wound up paying $290 million to trafficking victims Because for 16 years, they concealed $1 billion of transactions that they suspected were related to sex trafficking. But they hid these transactions until after Epstein died, and then they reported them.
So in essence, they had these flagged, right?
Yes.
They had these flagged. They'll come after somebody like me, for praying outside, say, an abortion clinic,
Yeah,
or
right.
they're arresting people all around the world. The
Yeah,
UK is big deal on this, 1,200 people a year for a social media post,
right,
arresting them, putting them in
right.
prison. And this, they just monitor and let it go. It's just
Let it go.
amazing injustice.
This is what I'm most concerned about, is that the magnitude of his trafficking was so great that either we have idiots who are in our government or they are totally and thoroughly corrupt. This, you can't, do you realize what $1 billion worth of trafficking of kids is? Or even over a 16-year, $1 billion? These people that are trafficked don't make that much money. These kids aren't making money. Epstein had somebody working for him who had been trafficked from Yugoslavia when she was 14 years old. And then she remained in his employ, and now she's an adult. And she was still working for him.
These kids, Tom, as you know, being a private investigator and before that, working for the Illinois Crime Division, really looking into cases like this, these kids are so groomed and indoctrinated in this as they grow up into adults, they don't realize how broken they are. And if these cases are just pushed under the rug, there's going to be these thousands of victims. They're going to carry this baggage and this trauma through their whole lives.
Right.
And we have to expose this. The same thing happened in the church when I was
It
a
isn't
young
just
guy.
it isn't it
Just
isn't
all
the trauma
variants.
it isn't necessarily just the trauma. People think of trauma that they have this pain all the time, what it does is it distorts their life. It becomes that this distortion turns them drives them into a path opposite of the way God wants them to be. God doesn't want people to be exploited that way, and they don't want them to go out and help others, get others to be exploited either.
I think about all these people that let this go, Tom, and they're involved in this. They don't think they're going to die. I don't think. I think they're going to
I
live
don't think
forever.
I don't think they're gonna face any consequences for
No,
what they do.
ever. If
Right.
they did, so here getting to the crux of this now, with Trump coming in, with Bondi being appointed, with Bongino, with Cash Patel, we thought we're going to get to the bottom of this. I think this is really what's disappointing people. What surprised me, I'd like to get your take on this. Your article is great. We're going to link it in the show notes. It really goes into all of this at a deep level, and I think people need to read this and understand it from the angle that you're presenting. But even Trump, in this last cabinet meeting, if you saw that,
I
he
did.
really pushed back, and he really didn't want to talk about this Epstein case. He really shut it down, tried to shut it down. And Jeff from Coffee and COVID, he's just
Yeah.
unbelievable, right? I love him. And he wrote, the President Donald Trump picked perhaps his biggest fight against his base yet on Saturday, unleashing a lengthy Truth social media post demanding Republicans not waste time and energy on Jeffrey Epstein, somebody that nobody cares about. But here's the issue. I don't really care about Jeffrey Epstein. He's dead now. And again, whether he committed suicide and murder, okay, we'll look into that. I guess we're trying to poo-poo that too. But at the end of the day, we're worried about those thousands of kids. And when he says this, he said, we have a perfect administration, he says, the talk of the world, and selfish people are trying to hurt it all over a guy who never dies, Jeffrey Epstein. He wrote, for years it's Epstein over and over again. And so he's right that we're not going to let this go, because here's the difference. This movement that supported Trump to a large extent are Christians, Tom. They actually care about these kids. And this is the big thing. We want to know what happened to those children and who did it to them. And so that's why we're not going to let it go. It's, people still are there supporting Trump. I mean, if you look at what could have happened with Biden winning, or Kamala Harris, I mean, this thing would have been buried so deep we would have never saw it. Now we saw this hope, and this is really what I want to ask you about. Why do you think he's doing this, Tom? Why do you all of a sudden, boom, it's a turn. We're going to push this out. We're going to move on to the next thing. And when he says we're the talk of the world, and selfish people are trying to hurt this movement, and I don't really get that. I hope there's something deeper that we're looking for here, and maybe I'm missing something.
Well, I'm going to detail that more in part two, but I'll give you a
Okay.
preview of what I'm
All right.
basically what I'm going to say. I understand completely why they're doing this. They've just been so inept at it. They're really one of the things talk about Trump lying every day. He's really a very bad liar, which is what this pushback at the cabinet meeting shows. He's really transparent in he doesn't want to lie the way he is. Dan Bongino and Kash Patel looked like they had a gun to their heads when they were being interviewed by Maria Bartiromo, and they said,
Yes.
and basically they focused on and says, yeah, I read the file. He committed suicide. And Kash Patel says, I've done all these cases and I know a suicide when I see it. Well, that's beside the point. It doesn't mean anything. What really is going on here, and this is the thing that I'm concerned about, is the deep corruption in our government that goes, any organization that can operate in the shadows without any transparency, without any light being shown on it, is going to become corrupt. And the CIA and these intelligence agencies, and also the law enforcement agencies like the FBI and the DEA, they've all become corrupt because they're operating in the shadows with impunity, and nobody's keeping an eye on them the way they should be.
You saw you to your point, and in your article, you can see how people start. You start to lie,
Right,
right? You start
right.
these lies, and you start this process, and you start. One guy is covering up from another guy. The CIA was involved in some of this stuff, and
See, look, let me put it, having been in law enforcement, let me explain really simply. When you try to get a criminal case against somebody, generally you'll go after the easiest target. And then you get that target, and then you twist them, and you twist their arms, you threaten them, you force them to cooperate with you so that they become an informant, so that they actually begin working for you, not just provide information, but begin working for you. So basically you have a gun to their head, where either you're going to go to jail forever, or you're going to help us get the guys that are up the chain. And so in doing so, they wind up corrupting themselves in the way in the way law enforcement handles these cases. And so they get somebody. They look at it as the only way they can get the higher level people is to do things that are really not very moral, that aren't very nice, that aren't honorable. And so, like for example, in order to get John Gotti, they basically gave immunity to Sammy the Bull Gravano, who was his number two. Well, Sammy the Bull Gravano murdered 19 people. So, here you are, you're basically getting in bed with somebody who is a terrible person in order to get somebody else who's a terrible person. So where's the good in that? And in doing so, you begin to realize, hey, it doesn't really make any difference. Some of them do. Now, one of the things that I did when I was with the state is I tried to get information on people using informants who were what I considered to be true believers. Somebody that did it for a cause, that they had a reason to go after somebody. It wasn't something that I tried to corrupt them in some way, that I tried to get something on them in order to force them to do something. I wanted them to do it willingly, and I was very successful at doing that.
do you think that they do this, Tom, because they don't want to take the time to look into those people, or they want to get the cases over with? Or
It's
I look at
convenient.
I know that the evil is out there, and there's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
probably so much on their plates. Could they in a timely fashion? Is that why they do this? Because they think they got to get this thing finished?
Here's what Epstein was doing. He was in order to facilitate his business operation, he developed relationships with very powerful people, with people that were influential all over the world. In order to get those people to do things that he wanted, he got them to do things like have sex with kids, and he filmed them. In his he had there were cameras in in all of his properties, including in all the bedrooms. So he would hook people up. He would get something on them, and even get something on them like have sex with an underage girl. Because if you have sex with an underage girl or underage boy, that's a lot of leverage. That gives you a lot of leverage. So let's say that the CIA and the Mossad and all these other intelligence agencies figured out this is what he was doing, and he was breaking laws all over the world. Okay, so now they say this is somebody we can use because now we got this on him. So then they tell him, says, we want to get something on, Bill Jones or something. And so you invite him to your place and compromise him and then give us the information. This is what they were doing. They were using him for his contacts and for his ability to corrupt people. It wasn't like the CIA or the Mossad was providing these girls, but they were facilitating his whole criminal operation that he was involved in because it benefited them.
So they're propping him up. They're protecting him in essence, so that they can get these other things done, and then they build up this monster.
Right. Essence. Well, let me give. I don't know. I don't know if Epstein had anything to do with it, but this is a similar kind of thing. There was an engineer that had access to the Iranian nuclear development. So he was in and out of there. He lived in Abu Dhabi with an Iranian wife, and but he was used, and he had access to Natanz, which is one of the facilities that they use to enrich uranium. And so he had access to these things. The Israelis and the Americans wanted to get the Stuxnet virus into the system there in Natanz so they could destroy the operation. They could make destruction of the operation. The Israelis,
this is a computer virus that you're talking about?
Yeah, it was a computer virus that they put into the network.
With all the viruses going on, I just want to make sure.
That it was air gap. They couldn't hack into it because it wasn't connected to the outside world. They need somebody to go in there with a flash drive and insert it into the system. And so this engineer, U.S. and Israelis targeted him over a period of a couple of years. And they didn't have any way to contact this guy, or they didn't have any reason to contact this engineer. So they went to the Dutch intelligence to get them to compromise the guy. Well, in some way, they compromised him and forced him to work for them. And that's how he got the Stuxnet virus into the Iranian system back, a number of years ago, which really set back their nuclear program many years. It was a brilliant operation, but we still don't know exactly what they did to compromise that engineer. He didn't do it because he was a true believer. He did it because they had something on him. And that something could have been that they compromised him with a girl or with a young girl, with anything. But they forced him to cooperate with them in some way. And this is what intelligence agencies do. This is what law enforcement agencies do. Somehow we've lost the ability to regulate this immorality that is part of our whole government system. We need to do something to realign what we do.
And
the Epstein case shows an example of how we facilitated in a monumental way the abuse and the exploitation of minors.
And Tom, it's amazing the network, how big this gets. I mean, he was involved in Harvard, and with this organization, this PDF, Program for Evolutionary Dynamics.
Right.
He gave money to Harvard. He had an office at Harvard. He had this is how crazy this gets when you start going down these rabbit holes and you start to follow them. It was basically a eugenics experiment.
Yes. Well, he was doing the eugenics experiments. He wanted to do that out in Zorro Ranch. It was really an island of Dr. Moreau kind of imaginings that he had. He was not only was an evil man, he was crazy. And maybe the evil drove him crazy. I don't know. But the thing that made Epstein so valuable to so many organizations was that he was a master of developing these high-level, highly connected networks of people. He could manipulate these networks to his own financial gain, and he was really remarkably good at it.
So when it comes down Tom. The use of prostitutes against our own politicians. I mean, this is well known in the halls of Congress. You get that power,
Right. Oh, yeah.
money, lust, selfish. I mean, it all gets into it, and then all of a sudden they start to vote and they change, and you realize somebody's got something on them, right, with the
Of
girl,
course.
etc. Now, when you're talking about minors, you're at another level where it's not only can destroy your marriage and your career, this will take you down and put you in prison for a long time. So you really got something on people. And those films, this is the bottom line. This is what we want exposed. I mean, is there a chance that somebody actually has these videos now of these people and this list? Because I just heard Dershowitz, the attorney, he said that he's seen this list and he's seen these names on the list, and there are other people that did. Is it, what's her first name? Maxwell's first name, is it
Ghislaine?
Ghislaine?
Ghislaine Maxwell. She's the daughter of Robert Maxwell.
Yeah. So now look at how she got involved. Now, why is she stepping forward now? Why do you think, what's behind her? She's still in prison right now, right?
She probably wants to get out.
You think that's what it is?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So
the thing. Look, based on what I've seen in all the records, if somebody actually was interested in telling a story, telling the whole story about Epstein, the information is already available.
When you say the information is available, are you talking about people now? And again, I think if it's already available, where?
Well, there's still some mystery.
$1 million question. Where is it?
Well, I'm writing some of it.
Okay. All right.
But the real question is, who in the government is behind this corruption? Well, who in the government chose to overlook all these things that Epstein had? Like if I had an informant with my agency, and somebody looks in the file and sees that there was some information that they needed and they want to pursue it a little bit more, and they needed that informant, they would have to come to me, and then I would have to get with my informant to get that information. It's not like oh, you got this guy's name and anybody in the CIA or the Mossad or somebody can call him up. No, there's a handler. There's somebody that operated Epstein, and when that handler retired, he turned him over to somebody else. Who were those people? And why aren't they being held accountable for overlooking all this depravity that was going on? It's not like this nameless government. Oh, the government, the CIA, the Mossad, or who the Saudi intelligence, or whoever it was. No, there is a person who is his handler, and that handler had a boss who knew about it, and that boss knew about it too. It's such high level intelligence that there would have been people all the way up the chain who were involved and who knew exactly what was going on. And this is why it's not coming out, because you can't put this in open court. You just couldn't put this. This is national security stuff. This is like top secret information. But I don't have confidence the way they're handling this, that these people that were within the government that were facilitating this kind of operation are being put in check now, because they're coming out and saying, oh, it doesn't exist. There's nothing to see here. If they came out and said, yeah, this is what was going on, we can't tell you the details of it because it would jeopardize national security, but we're going to put a stop to it right now.
So, Tom, I just had brought up Maxwell, and I suppose she could expose a lot, right? What's the danger to her if she starts this thing? I mean, it could be crazy.
I don't know. The thing is that she has some really damaging information about people who are very rich. They could try to go after her.
You think? I mean, you look at it, we've done just about everything else. If Dan Bongino and Kash Patel and even Trump's trying to put this down, Pam Bondi for some reason, I brought up Tulsi Gabbard, she was just on Turning Point, and she said that I feel this frustration too. She goes to the audience, I know you're frustrated that we're not moving fast enough. She goes, I feel that frustration. And she deliberately called out the deep state that we're talking about here, and the corruption in the deep state. And so these people are battling, but it seems like it's so deep, Tom, so entrenched that just like you and I always talk about the public school system, you almost have to throw the whole thing out. It's so deep and so entrenched. It seems like our government is the same. You put good people in place, but they can't do much. It's really a mystery in many ways how deep this runs. Nobody can really define exactly what that deep state is. It's just corruption at so many levels, I believe.
Well, I think there is a lot you can do about it.
Yeah.
And I've been in government, so I'm fairly certain. I've been in the Air Force, so I've got experience with national defense issues, and I've also been in the state, so I'm familiar with how law enforcement operates, how it could operate. The problem is too many agencies want to do the expedient thing, which is usually the wrong way to do it. So the thing that bothers me is that there's no assurance from the way the Trump administration is handling this. There's no assurance that people, those handlers and the people in that system are being controlled to do the right thing rather than to allow the facilitation of this sexual exploitation of children to continue. It wasn't just, Epstein isn't the only one. Epstein was a part owner in a modeling agency, modeling that service, Jean-Luc Brunel. He had contacts all over the world. He supplied models to companies, to private parties, to public parties. He would supply models for people that would go to conventions or something, and they had booths, and so he'd have models. The models would go there to attract customers. He did all that kind of stuff all over the world, okay? Well, he isn't the only modeling agency. He's not the only modeling agency like that. He's not the only modeling agency that's involved in prostitution. Who else are these guys using, or in the intelligence services using to compromise people? One of the easiest ways to compromise some guy out on a business trip is to supply him with a girl. It's an easy thing to do.
Yeah. And people fall for that all the time, right?
All
you have
the time.
A few cocktails, you have a few
it's not
drinks,
just
and
criminals
boom,
that do it. Our own government is doing it.
Yeah.
This kind of stuff should stop.
But, when you get nefarious to the point where you're not only sending models, Tom, we're sending underage models.
Right.
And this is where I'm sure Epstein got into this role, and then he gets the connections, right? He meets these models, and then away you go, At this point, though,
this is what I see. Okay. It creates an environment where we're looking at children as being fair game. In Illinois, the age of consent is 17, which means that you're underage only if you're 16 or below. Well, that's ridiculous. There's a movement to try to lower the age of consent even lower. In most places in Europe, it's 16, the age of consent. And
look,
they want to eliminate the age of consent.
Isn't Illinois? You don't even need the parental right for an abortion now for a young girl. Isn't it 13 years old?
They don't have to notify them even.
It's unbelievable, right? And so usually, not always, of course, but usually, this girl is in that place at 13, 14 years old because she's a victim of somebody. And so we're covering up this even in our own beautiful state of Illinois here, aren't we?
Yes,
by
we
allowing them to abort children from children and just wipe it under the rug,
Right. They're not, now they're even 13 years old. It's illegal for them to have sex with anybody. But they're not even investigating it to find out who exploited them.
Yeah.
This guy, there's a Brian Crowder, he's on trial. I don't know what happened to the trial, but he was accused of getting a girl pregnant twice and having her when she was underage and she was a student, and taking her in for an abortion, claiming that he was her father. He was the one that impregnated her.
I remember in high school, as I look back now, there were a couple of teachers in high school, and they used to be flirting, good-looking young teachers, right? Flirting with these girls in our school. And then we found out later on, they were having affairs and stuff, and so this goes back, many, many years. So at the end of the day, I mean, something like Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, I had this feeling, and I still had this feeling, that these guys would like to do the right thing. Tulsi Gabbard's frustrated. Pam Bondi seems like someone that would want to do the right thing, but it seemed like they all pivoted here. Is there something underneath that happened that
Yeah,
just stopped this
of,
process?
of,
So
of
what
course,
stopped the process now?
because it's still being used. That's why. This and what they're afraid if they come out with it, that there'll be a demand that there be prosecutions, and they can't prosecute because it's national defense information. Or somebody will come out and say, well, if you try to blow the whistle on me, I'm going to tell all about what we're up to. I'm going to release all this information.
So
So
do
they're
you
in a
think
position where they can't say anything because we have a corrupt national defense system.
so? In other words, is it their just hands are tied? They just see that, wow, this is just too big. It's just still there's some missing part here that
It doesn't. It's Barry Seals was running drugs for the DEA. As part of some DEA operation.
But do you think
The
people
CIA has brought in heroin from the Golden
but do
Triangle
you
into the
think
United
somebody
States.
like Cash Patel again, Dan Bongino, Bondi, but they must know this ahead of time because they were all talking about exposing this. They must have had some. They're intelligent people that have some decent backgrounds. Do you think though, Tom, when they finally just come right up to the point where they really feel that they need to do something and then come across what you're saying right now and just go, guys, we're not going to be able to do anything. It's just
Well,
too much.
I don't think I don't know. Pam Bondi wouldn't know anything about it. She was an attorney general in Florida. I don't think she ever worked for the government other than and she might have known something about law enforcement activities, but she wouldn't know anything about these nefarious national defense operations unless she did a lot of reading. Yeah, since I've been in the field, I read about these things all the time. I keep up on it, but most people, they could care less.
So that's my question. Do you think that they just when they see the stark reality on how big and evil this is, that they just see this is I'm questioning is like you come up and they just hitting a wall and saying we're going to have to back off of this for right now. We're not going to use the time and the energy. This would take our whole government to investigate, and who knows with the deep state, it could take us all down. Or I mean, is this a reality that we're facing now with such a
Yeah,
big
well,
evil that we just back off? Is this what Trump is seeing right now?
I think Trump is looking at it from the standpoint of we have more important things to do because really the United States when he came in, was in pretty sad shape.
Right. No, that's
So
true.
economically, militarily, from a national defense standpoint, he's doing just remarkable things to reestablish the United States.
So that's my question then. Do you think it's just says, hey, we can't deal with everything. We're going to deal with just this. But I would think
Well,
as a government, as the president, I'd say, hey, look I'm not going to deal with this anymore. I can't take this, but I'm going to put somebody on it, a special prosecutor. It would have sounded a lot better at the cabinet meeting. I'm going to put this team on it, and they're going to continue to grind away at this thing. I mean, at least from a PR standpoint, don't you think if you were the president that instead of pushing it under the rug and saying there's nothing here anymore.
well, I know, I know that at least two intelligence agencies were involved with Epstein: the Israelis and the U.S., the CIA. We may be able to control the U.S. We can't do anything about the Israelis, and who knows what other intelligence agencies were involved in this. Remember, Epstein was compromising people all over the world. And so he was a potential asset for every intelligence agency in the world, not just ours. And Epstein had no moral compass. So there was no reason for him to say, well, I'm not going to cooperate with you because I'm an American. Now, you give me the money, depending on what you can give to me, I'll help you out. So who knows what threats have been issued against the United States by other intelligence agencies.
We don't have a lot of time, but I would like to at least touch on because I think they're related. You wrote an article right before this one called Reaffirming Parental Rights. And the reason I bring it up with only a little time left is because people that are listening to this show are frustrated about things. They can do things. And I think no matter what happens here, as we see this play out, you and I work on stolen innocence and we work for kids, that that it's going to take millions of people that are going to at least step forward and try to do something. And you can at the local level. And we're seeing parents all over the United States standing up, but it's still the minority. Most people still don't stand up and do anything. But we are changing the people that do stand up. You know, there's something about truth and goodness, the beauty of love and being concerned about all of these victims. Well, these victims are happening into our schools all over our country, in my neighborhood, in your neighborhood, in everybody's neighborhood. And we have to be cognizant of this. That's why I think this reaffirming parental rights that you wrote about, and again, I'll link this letter, I think is very, very important. I just sent it out on my Substack, Tom, to push it out to our audience here to make sure that they didn't miss this letter that you wrote on Substack. And so let's just go over it just briefly, and we'll touch on it again. Is it Mahmoud versus Taylor? And you say in your article, it has broader implications than you might think. On the surface, it may seem to apply only to the assignment of reading materials in the classroom, but it's way more than that. You and I are very familiar with this. Our audience that's been listening to us for a while is familiar with this. Pushing the LGBTQ plus stories and books, which is really pornography again. I get back to child pornography. We're, whatever happens in this Epstein case, we still, as just people that are concerned about kids, need to start to stand up and at least go to these school board meetings, run for election, get these books and this grooming out of the schools. But anyways, we had some positive, and this is probably what we should focus on. Something positive came out of the Supreme Court, and maybe you can outline some.
Right. Well, it really reestablishes parents as having control over what their kids are exposed to in school, that they can opt their kids out of things that are contrary to what their religious beliefs are. But it's also important for parents to stand up and assert those rights and to do the right thing, not only for themselves but for their children and for their family. And this is the thing that every person can do. If they have whatever opportunity appears to them, whatever opportunity God gives to them, they can choose to do the right thing or the wrong thing. They have that choice throughout every day. And take it a little bit back to the Epstein case. I had a case when I was with the state where I went out and developed an informant, because everybody said, oh, you can't develop true believer informants. They're not reliable. You can't do anything with them. You got to get buy and bust, get them, you got to get leverage on them. You got to be able to do this. I went out and developed an informant for the gangs investigation, Kenny Morrow. He had formerly been a member of the El Rucan street gang, and he drifted away from them, started trying to live a honorable life. I approached him and gave him an opportunity to redeem himself, and also to get revenge for his brother's death at the same time. I convinced him to work for me. I didn't have anything on him. I convinced him to work for me. He went back in, reacquainted himself with the El Rucans, got involved in that organization, and destroyed the organization. His information took down that organization. One of the biggest street gangs ever in Chicago, one of the most dangerous street gangs ever in Chicago. And so you don't have to use these evil methods to attack evil. You can do it the right way, and unfortunately that model has not been picked up by other people.
Yeah. Whatever happened to him?
Kenny Morrow, he died. He actually.
But was he killed?
No, he was put in witness protection program, and he was relocated to Arizona. He went out and got drunk one night, and he crawled into he had an argument with his girlfriend. He crawled into a metal Quonset hut and went to sleep on a Friday night, early Saturday morning. And of course, in Arizona, it's a lot hotter than it is up here. And the sun came up, got about 120 to 150 degrees inside the Quonset hut, and he died of exposure. They found him dead on Monday morning.
Unbelievable. So when at least the Supreme Court is backing us up, what we're going to find, though, and again, I think that your article is really good because it's a comprehensive article. It kind of takes us through some of the things that you and I talk about all the time. Because what we find is with the education system, now the LGBTQ again. Think about it. I think of it as porn, really. Grooming and porn. That's going to take these young kids again. It really steals their innocence and it obliterates their moral imaginations. They start to look
Por-
at each other as and so what we're doing is we're bringing up all of these kids that have no moral basis, no moral foundation, Tom. And here's the concern, right? So we have this deep state that's corrupt, and now we are corrupt at the schools and the kids beneath. Unless parents stand up and protect their kids, if nothing else, and don't fall for this book banning bullshit,
right.
because at the end of the day, parents have the right to say, I'm not trying to ban a book. I'm trying to use my common sense, moral decency to say nobody has the right to sexualize our kids. And that's what we've been talking about here with the Epstein. You cannot just sexualize children. They're sexualizing our own children and our own grandchildren right beneath our noses, Tom. And this is something we can do something about, and we need to do something about. To your point, and this will be my last thing I'll throw it back to you, is that truth and goodness, when you walk into that arena, this is the point you just made. There's a power to that. There's a power to truth. When you speak the truth, there's a power there because you're not alone anymore. You walk with God when you do that, and to do the right thing. Look we're all getting older. We're all going to die, Tom. Let's do something good with our lives before we're out of here. And we got to get out of this selfish mentality that just says, "Hey, the government, they're so corrupt, forget about it," because they're raising our taxes. These poor young people can't afford homes anymore. We're corrupting everything, and nobody seems to care except for a handful of people that you and I are working with. You got some wonderful people exposing this on the internet and stuff, and they are rising up. They are rising up, but we need more people.
Most people mistake pornography as being something that's just visual, that it's a picture or a video or something. Pornography is written too. There's written material that describes things that is even more pornographic than pictures.
Yeah, it
And
is.
that's and they actually have these kinds of books that they're giving to children who are very young. And it sets their mind in a direction of the world rather than a direction that God wants them to go in. And so
Yeah.
you can't. It's like I said, this one girl that was working for Epstein, she was trafficked to the United States to Epstein from Yugoslavia, where she had sexual relationships with Epstein, and then she continued in his employ, and now she's an adult and was still working for him. This became the norm for her. How many times? I mean, there's been many cases when I've interviewed kids who have been sexually abused where they don't see it as abuse, they see it as the norm. It's not an abuse. This is just the way things are. So their whole outlook on everything gets twisted, and that's what we're doing to our children. We're steeping them in this immoral atmosphere, not just sexual, but in even things like, well, it's okay to use somebody for your own purposes. It's okay to get leverage on them. It's okay to
We start to look at people exactly like Epstein and these people we're talking about, including the rich, the elite that use these kids for
right.
sex. We start to see them as objects. We no longer see them as persons. When we do that, we're in bad shape, just from a moral standpoint.
Yes.
Our civilization will decline just because of this. I mean, Bishop Sheen wrote this back when I was in high school. He said of the 22 major civilizations all through history, 19 of them came down and were destroyed not by an outside force, but from moral corruption from the inside. And that's what we're seeing here. Nobody could take the United States down from an exterior force, but we are rotting from the inside, and so this is really the danger that's out there today, and we have a responsibility. Look, we can't change the whole world, we know that, but we can change what's right around us, and it starts with our own heart. We got to start walking into the truth and certainly protect the kids and the people right around us.
Well, it's I ended the article on Epstein with "Not to act is to act, not to speak is to speak," attributed to Dietrich Bonhoeffer, and that's exactly what the problem is. We're not acting, we're not speaking, which speaks volumes.
Because here's what the court said, and this is in your article. The Supreme Court now rejected the notion that the book simply exposed students to differing ideas, because this is the story, right? We
Right.
always hear, Tom, when we're at school
Yes.
board meetings, no, we're just exposing them. Everybody has a right to be exposed to this. And the court said this. No, that's not what you're doing. The majority determined, 6-3 here, that the storybooks that we're talking about here clearly advanced a specific viewpoint, and kids were punished in all different ways, ostracized in a lot of times if they didn't go along with this. And so the pressure on these young people to go along with these ideologies is tough. When
Right.
you're a
And
young child.
if it's okay to use people sexually for your own purposes, then it's okay to use people in any other way for your own purposes as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't
You
that what
know,
they're being taught?
that last part that you said you closed the article with. Can you state that again, because it reminds me of
Yeah, that
something
was
I
in
just
the
heard.
Epstein article. I says, not to act is to act, not to speak is to speak.
So here, it just reminded me when I read that. So yesterday, as we're recording this, it won't go out until later on in the week, but we're recording this on a Monday. Yesterday, Sunday, I was at Mass. And the readings were really interesting. The first reading from Moses, and it says this. It's talking about these things, and it said, "If you would only heed the voice of the Lord." This is from Deuteronomy chapter 30. "Keep his commandments and statutes that are written in this book of the law, when you return to the Lord with all your heart and with all your soul. For he says, for this is the command," he said. It is very interesting. "For this command which I enjoin on you today is not too mysterious and remote for you. It's not up in the sky." This is Moses speaking, that you should say, "I have to go up in the sky and get it so I can tell you what it is. Nor is it across the sea. Who will cross the sea and get it for us and tell us of it, that we may carry it out? No," Moses said, "it's something very near to you, ready in your mouths and in your hearts." To your point, Tom, he ends, you have to go out and carry it out. You have to carry it out. And so Moses said, we already know this. We know what to do. Now you have to go and carry it out. So this is
Right.
not pie in the sky. This is his point. The gospel reading was from, and it'll be the same kind of thing. The gospel was from Luke, and it was this lawyer goes up to Jesus and says, "Teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" And he says, "Well, what's written in the law?" And he goes, "It's all the commandments and all this stuff." And he says, "Well, how do you interpret that? How do you read it?" And then this lawyer replies to Jesus, "You shall love your Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself." And then he takes him into the Good Samaritan, right? He says, this guy was beaten by these robbers. He's laying on the side of the road dying. The priest walks to the other side, doesn't want anything to do with it. The Levite walks to the other side, and it's the Samaritan, the Good Samaritan, who the Samaritans were enemies of Israel. And Jesus says, he's the one, right, that stopped by, picked him up, brought him to the inn, and took care of him. And he said, "This is your neighbor." He says, "Which one is your neighbor?" This is your neighbor, that we have to watch out for one another, regardless of who they are. These are people, and we have to help pick them up. And this is this is the essence of what it comes down to. We could all do it in our own little ways, can't we?
Yeah, and we're not doing it.
No, no. And
They
look, we're going to pay
they
the
have
price, Thomas.
they have all
TikTok,
these,
right?
they have all this stuff. You go on these mission trips and all this kind of stuff. They're just nothing but glorified vacations, and yet we just turn a blind eye to the things that our government is doing that are clearly wrong. And a lot of these people work in government, and they're turning a blind eye to it. They're not doing anything about it. If I had been in the government and saw how they were complicit in the sexual exploitation of children, I would have said something. Where are the people saying something?
And you think they have to be there.
Of course they are.
That's why I was so excited about these people that I mentioned over and over again, the Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, etc. Because I thought that would rally the troops, that these good people would start to surface and expose this. Sometimes they're just waiting for a good shepherd, a good leader to come so they can start, because they don't want to get fired. They got their money, they got their family, and I'm sure people have been fired over this.
Just look at Kash Patel and Dan Bongino. Look at their body language, and they were being interviewed by Maria
Yeah.
Bartiromo on May 10th. They literally looked like somebody was on the wings pointing a gun at them. Okay, it was so stiff, it was unbelievable. And
These are
then
not
we
these
look.
these are not cowards.
No,
That's
no,
why there's a link there that's they're coming up against some kind of wall that they're
right.
sensing.
And
And I
then
hope they have
look
another
at
strategy, Tom, and
look
they're
at
not going to
Trump
just let
too. I
this
mean,
go.
he's talking about being open and transparent, and then all of a sudden, at that cabinet meeting, it was like, holy smokes! The guy asked a question, and it's like, hey, he might as well have told the Secret Service to shoot this guy.
Unbelievable. Well, speaking of that, we start to talk about, how you can go down these rabbit holes, and when you start to do small things wrong and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So here's this guy, Donald Trump. When Donald Trump, so Sunday marked the first anniversary of the shooting, right, of Donald Trump.
Right,
So, everybody remembers, where we were when it happened. The president is fortunate that the 2024 second and less hero attempt on his life. Remember, they saw this guy. I think he was on a golf
right,
range or something, getting ready
right.
to shoot. Right. And so, listen to this. So he's in prison now. And so, had it not been for the keen eye of a few Secret Service agents, suspected wannabe assassinator Ryan Ruth could have abruptly ended Trump's life less than 2 months before Election Day. Can you imagine how the country would have reacted? Now that he's locked up, Ruth is less than thrilled by the prospect of remaining in a cell for decades until his unceremonious death. Based on a bizarre letter he penned in June, he said he'd likely prefer a quick execution. I'd rather be dead, he said. Why is the death penalty not allowed, he wrote. Now here's the point. At nearly 60, he says, a life of nothingness without love, what's the point? I mean, can you imagine? This is what he writes. Now, he was there getting ready to assassinate Donald Trump, and then he's sitting in jail going, you might as well kill me because at 60, a life of nothingness without love, what's the point? And so he gets the point. He just doesn't make a connection, Tom,
Right.
that we are people of love. That's what we're called out to do. You even love your enemies, right? That doesn't mean I got to like them. That doesn't mean I don't do anything against them. That doesn't mean I don't stand up at school board meetings. But hatred has got to stop, and this is what Jesus said all the time. And here's a guy saying a life of nothingness without love. And yet he was living this out. See, this is that disconnection, Tom. We just don't make that connection that we are these people of love. You can't go shooting people. You can't be sexualizing young people in school systems. You can't be exploiting young girls and trying to have sex with them. And becoming people of love, you sit in prison, you go, you might
Right.
as well kill me now because my life is nothingness. What was it before, dude?
Right.
When you didn't do anything, you know? Craziness, man. You can't make this stuff up, right? And one more point here that Israeli settlers beat American citizen to death. They thought he was, I guess, Hamas or something. He was visiting Israel on the West Bank, and a mob of settlers, Israeli settlers, beat the 20-year-old American to death on Friday, brutally killing the Florida man Musalet and 23-year-old Mohammed Shabibi before reportedly blocking an ambulance from helping the suffering victims for 3 hours, and he died. And so here again, you're going to kill an innocent man walking down the street because of your hatred. And this hatred, Tom, will go on and on and on. These wars will not stop unless the human hearts get turned. And this is a battle of the human heart, my friend. John Paul
Yes, it
II would
is.
say it always starts on the battlefield of the individual heart, between good and evil, between love and lusting and taking, right? And unless we're all willing to fight that battle and then stand up like Moses said and go out and act, there's not much hope. But the good news is, Tom, each one of us can do this. Each one of us can do this. We can, we fight that battlefield on the battlefield of the heart, and we become persons that care about other people, love God, be filled with divine life and love, and then go out and love your neighbor. It's simple. It's not easy. Look at it. You have to remember to love your wife and your kids and the people right
Right. Yeah.
around you. But that's where it starts. That's where it starts. Last words?
Yeah. No, there's I have too many.
All right. Well, let's end it there.
All
And
right.
we look forward to part 2. When's it going to come out?
I'm hoping I'll have it out next week. It's a lot more complicated than part one because I've got to
I
explain
betcha.
why all this, why they're acting like they've got guns to their head.
I can't believe that you're taking on an article like that. That's got to be just so time consuming. That doesn't just roll off
No,
the
no,
pen, does it?
no, it doesn't. No,
No. Hey, God
no, but
bless you.
it's
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for joining us. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Talk to you again soon. Bye bye.
bye.